To succeed in the WWE, a professional wrestler needs to at least be decent in the ring, good on the mic, and have an interesting character and personality, but perhaps one of the most important aspects of a pro wrestler that is overlooked is their appearance. Making it in the WWE is hard enough anyway, even if you have all the in-ring talent in the world. But if you don't have an interesting look, you can kiss your chances of succeeding in the company goodbye. A wrestler's look often changes with their gimmick, or it changes as a result of Father Time taking its toll on a wrestler's appearance. A lot of times, the company goes out of its way to completely repackage certain stars it believes have potential, but have just been saddled with the wrong gimmick and look. A platform such as NXT comes in handy, as the company likes to take its time to allow young talent to develop their gimmicks and looks before main roster exposure. Being prematurely called up to the main roster can be the worst thing for your career, so superstars down in NXT tend to spend a considerable amount of time there perfecting their gimmick, as well as their character work and ring skills, and of course, their look. Many superstars who have been called up from NXT have changed a lot over the years, and it's easy to forget how often wrestlers evolve in the business, so let's check out 10 wrestlers that look very different now compared to their time in NXT. And here's a disclaimer, this list will also include wrestlers who underwent makeovers during their time in NXT, which carried over to the main roster, but they did spend time looking very different on the developmental brand. Now, let's get on with it. We all know Bray Wyatt as the former leader of the Wyatt family, but it's so easy to forget that before he was a cult leader, he was good old Husky Harris. Before his wars with the Shield and match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania, Bray was introduced to the universe as Husky Harris. He was a part of the Nexus, and under Wade Barrett's guidance, he achieved, well, nothing, other than getting punted in the head by Randy Orton and getting sent back down to NXT, which was still called FCW at the time. He was written off programming early on in 2011, and he spent over a year in FCW before he debuted the character of Bray Wyatt in April of 2012. He spent a few months as a singles act before forming the Wyatt family in November of that year, adopting Luke Harper as his first son and Eric Rowan as his second. Wyatt debuted on the main roster alongside his family sometime in mid-2014, and the group quickly went on to become one of the most exciting parts of Raw. Their wars with the Shield were legendary, and even if WWE didn't handle the group's dissolution well, and don't seem to understand what makes Wyatt special in the first place, he still had big moments, such as facing Taker at WrestleMania in addition to being a one-time WWE champion. It seemed like he had found his way back to relevance alongside Woken Matt Hardy, but Wyatt has now spent months off TV, so he might be in store for the latest incarnation of Bray Wyatt, only time will tell. Seth Rollins has really found his groove over the last few months. Rollins' run as a babyface wasn't really working out for him because it was hard to figure out just what his character was, but ever since that amazing gauntlet match on Raw, where he lasted an hour and 5 minutes in the ring, a company record in Raw's 25-year history, fans chant "burn it down" everywhere he goes, and with the return of the McMahons to TV, his character finally has the edge it needs. It has been wonderful to see Rollins' evolution both as a wrestler and character over the years. The Seth Rollins we see today is very different from the Rollins who debuted in NXT a few years ago. His hair had that signature dash of blonde, his facial hair wasn't nearly as impressive, and he was about half the size he is now. Some were actually unhappy when he returned without a splash of color in his hair, because it was probably the most defining aspect of his look. But it is so easy to overlook just how jacked Rollins has gotten over the past few years. It is difficult to imagine the debuting Rollins being able to pull off a superplex Falcon Arrow combo with ease, or even keep up with the work rate of the Architect we see today. It will be interesting to see what comes next in the evolution of Seth Rollins. The Goddess was one of the best parts of Raw whenever she was able to perform, and the fact that WWE has been scrambling to give the universe more of her shows just how important she is to the company. Her in-ring work could be a little hit or miss, but there is pretty much nobody that could match Little Miss Bliss's character work and ability on the mic. But the first person to hold the Raw and SmackDown women's titles didn't start out with the Goddess gimmick. She was initially introduced to the intimate crowds of NXT as an excitable cheerleader-like character who blew glitter on the stage. As expected, that didn't really work out for her until she turned heel and aligned herself with the then NXT Tag Team Champions Buddy Murphy and Wesley Blake. It's difficult to imagine her finding the same level of success on the main roster with her original gimmick, so the change probably worked out best for everyone. Before becoming the legit boss of WWE, Sasha Banks was just another superstar in NXT trying to make a name for herself. The boss we see today has swagger and spades, has funky colored hair, and enough bling to make her cousin Snoop Dogg jealous. After debuting in NXT on December 12th of 2012, Banks did not unveil her character as the boss till the end of September 2013. Her heel work in NXT was some of the best character work the company had seen in a long time. It was on full display in her feud against Bayley, and for a while it seemed like the company wanted to reignite the rivalry on the main roster. But the company looks to have dropped the ball on that idea. Regardless of the mishandling of her character over the last year, Banks is only one big win away from being front and center of the women's division once more. Enzo Amore had a habit of ruffling feathers during his time in WWE, but he crossed the line by some distance when he was released from the company amid allegations of sexual harassment. He lost his position at the top of 205 Live, and a pretty average music career hasn't done enough to generate any goodwill for the real G. Once upon a time, Amore was one of the biggest acts in the company alongside Big Cass, as his Gift of Gab and Gift of Jab got the duo over in a big way with the universe. Amore has had more looks than ups and downs over the course of his career, and his inadequacies in the ring were covered up by the numerous hairstyles and hair colors he sported during his time with the company. WWE is going to regret letting Neville go, especially when you consider that he is one of AEW's biggest signings. Pac, formerly known as Neville, has a bone to pick with Vince's company because he was mismanaged. Nothing would make Neville happier than to stick it to Vince by turning AEW into a big enough deal to compete with the WWE. Regardless of the bad blood, Neville was one of the best NXT champions and even had a great run as the king of the cruiserweights and should be credited with the resurgence of 205 Live. Neville had a pretty average look during his time in NXT, just another jacked up long-haired superstar in a sea of plenty. But sometime during his main roster run, Neville shook things up by growing out a beard and shaving the sides of his head. And just like that, the king had come to claim his throne. The former GM of Raw has had quite the journey in WWE, from being tipped to be a main event star to unsuccessfully cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase. Corbin has been through the ringer. In addition to the journey Corbin the man has been on, his hair has arguably been through more. After debuting with short hair and a signature chin beard, Corbin decided to let his hair grow out, which was a terrible decision, seeing as though he's balding. He has wrestled shirtless with a sleeveless shirt on, and now he wrestles in Western formals with a skull shining brighter than the highest quality diamond. Roman Reigns didn't spend much time in NXT, but he is definitely one of the most decorated stars in the company. For being a part of the Shield, Reigns wrestled in trunks and without any other gear, which is a far departure from the modified tactical gear he ended up main eventing 4 successive WrestleManias in. The bearded one did not have a beard during his run in the first season of NXT. Clean shaven and with short hair, Bryan has changed up his look a lot. Even though he still wrestles in trunks, just like he always has, he has traded in the clean shaven look for long shaggy hair and a beautiful beard. After being the most unlikely man to main event WrestleMania, Bryan is now reigning as champion of SmackDown, and his long hair and beard have been right there with him. Sheffield traded in his cowboy hat for a singlet and grew out a beard to become Ryback, the man who got to the top of the mountain by chanting "Feed me more" and taking out multiple jobbers at a time. It's highly unlikely that Ryback would have flirted with the main event on Raw with the Skip Sheffield gimmick, so the change to Ryback was a double-edged sword. He made it to the main event, but we had to deal with him wrestling in the main event. I'll let you in the comments decide if that's good or bad. And these are 10 WWE wrestlers that look very different now compared to their time in NXT. I hope you're all having an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching Wrestling Hub, and I'll see you later with more videos.